Have you ever stopped to think why, even though you have access to literally everything in the palm of your hand, you feel more anxious, more lost and more empty than ever? Why, in an age where we can watch any movie, talk to anyone, learn anything, do we still feel trapped in a spiral of constant dissatisfaction? Welcome to the paradox of plenty, the cruelest phenomenon of our digital age. We've never had so much, we've never been able to have so much, and we've never suffered so much because of it. If you've made it to this video, you're probably feeling the effects of this toxic abundance firsthand. Maybe you spend hours scrolling through endless feeds, feeling simultaneously entertained and devastated. Maybe you have hundreds of courses saved, but can't seem to complete any of them. Maybe you have 1,000 contacts on WhatsApp, but feel deeply alone. I have a promise for you. Over the next few minutes, I will unlock fundamental codes in your mind. Codes that the great Stoic philosophers discovered more than 2,000 years ago, and that today prove to be the only truly effective tools for navigating the digital chaos in which we live. When this video ends, you will not be the same person. You will have in your hands a precise map to transform digital abundance from a curse into a blessing. The paradox of abundance is simple to understand, but devastating to live. Our minds have been programmed for scarcity, to value what is rare, to strive for what is limited. But now we live in a world where everything is infinite, infinite content, infinite options, infinite possibilities. And our minds, not knowing how to process so much abundance, collapse. Think about your Netflix. How many times have you spent more time choosing what to watch than actually watching it? Think about your social networks. How many hours have you wasted consuming other people's lives, comparing yourself to edited versions of reality? Think about your email inbox, your apps, your podcast list, your library of digital books. Everything is there, infinite, available, and at the same time overwhelming. The ancient Stoics, Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, lived in a time of relative simplicity, but their teachings are prophetically relevant for our time. They developed a philosophical system based on 3 fundamental pillars, focusing on what we can control, accepting what we cannot change, and cultivating wisdom through daily practice. Today, we're going to apply these 3 pillars to the 10 biggest challenges of the digital age. We'll discover how to transform choice paralysis into clarity of purpose, how to convert toxic comparison into authentic growth, how to transform constant distraction into laser focus. This isn't just another productivity or digital detox video. This is a survival manual for your mind in the age of abundance. Get ready for a journey from recognizing the problem to implementing practical solutions that work. Subscribe to the channel to strengthen our support network, okay? And so we begin our journey by unlocking the first code, the illusion of infinite choice. If you've ever spent 15 minutes browsing Netflix without choosing anything to watch, or if you've ever had dozens of tabs open in your browser without being able to focus on any of them, you're all too familiar with this problem. Decision paralysis is the first symptom of the paradox of abundance. Our society has sold us the lie that more options always mean more freedom, more happiness, more satisfaction. But science proves the exact opposite. Psychologist Barry Schwartz has shown that after a certain point, more options lead to less satisfaction, more anxiety, and more regret. Think about the last time you had to choose a movie to watch. 20 years ago, you went to the video store, had maybe 50 options, picked one, and was satisfied. Today, you have thousands of movies available instantly, and yet you spend more time searching than watching. Why? Because your mind is obsessed with all the options you're rejecting. This phenomenon manifests itself in all areas of our digital lives. Choosing an online course from among thousands available. Deciding which news story to read from among hundreds that arrive every minute. Selecting a song from among millions of songs streaming. Every decision becomes a traumatic event because our mind endlessly calculates the opportunity cost of each choice. The Stoics had a radically different approach to decision-making. They did not seek the perfect choice, but the appropriate choice. They did not seek to maximize options, but to clarify values. Epictetus taught that wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Applied to our digital choices, this means that real freedom comes from having fewer options, not more. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, developed a simple method for decision-making that we can apply today. He asked, "Does this bring me closer to being my best self?" If the answer was yes, he acted. If it was no, he rejected. No analysis paralysis, no endless rumination. Let's apply this practically. Whenever you find yourself lost in a forest of digital options, apply the 3 Stoic criteria. First, is this really necessary? Second, does this align with my core values? Third, is this within my control? Grab your smartphone right now. Look at all the apps you have installed. How many do you really need? How many actually serve your life goals? How many do you keep just in case? Most of your digital choices are not conscious choices, they are unconscious accumulations. The first code to unlock is this: freedom doesn't come from having infinite options, but from having clear criteria for filtering those options. When you stop trying to maximize every decision and start optimizing for clarity and alignment, something magical happens. You move from paralysis to action. Start small. Today, choose 3 apps on your phone that you will uninstall. Not the best or the worst, just 3 that clearly don't serve their purpose. Feel the lightness that comes from simplification. This is the taste of Stoic freedom. From the chaos of infinite choices, we now plunge into an even more subtle and destructive trap: constant comparison. If decision paralysis leaves us stagnant, toxic comparison leaves us feeling small, inadequate, and at perpetual war with ourselves. Social media has taken our natural tendency towards social comparison and amplified it to industrial proportions. Before, you were comparing yourself to your neighbors, your coworkers, maybe a few celebrities. Today, you're comparing yourself simultaneously to millions of people, 24 hours a day, through highly edited and filtered versions of their lives. Every time you open Instagram, your mind unconsciously makes hundreds of micro-comparisons. That influencer's body versus your body. That acquaintance's trip versus your routine. That couple's perfect relationship versus your personal challenges. And with each comparison, you lose out, because you're comparing your raw reality to the edited performance of others. The result is a silent epidemic of inadequacy. You begin to believe that everyone else is living a more interesting, more beautiful, more fulfilling life than you. That you're falling behind in a race you shouldn't even be running. That there's something fundamentally wrong with you. But here's the second code we're going to unlock. The Stoics discovered 2,000 years ago that comparison is always a form of self-torture, and they developed powerful antidotes for this mental poison. Epictetus, who knew suffering like few others, taught that we should compare ourselves to only one person, who we were yesterday. Do not compare yourself to others, he said. Compare yourself only to who you were in the past. This is the only comparison that makes sense, because it is the only one where you have control over both sides of the equation. Marcus Aurelius, who had access to all the luxuries of the Roman Empire but also faced unimaginable pressures, wrote in his personal meditations, "What folly it is to worry about what others think of you, when you can barely understand your own thoughts." He understood that wasting mental energy on the opinions of others is wasting the most precious resource we have, our attention. Seneca went even deeper. He noted that when we envy someone, we are essentially saying that we want to trade our entire life for that person's entire life, not just the good things we see, but also all the challenges, pains, and limitations we don't. No one can live a happy life if he is always looking at what others have, he concluded. Let's apply this to social media. Every time you feel a pang of envy or inadequacy when you see a post, stop and remember, you're only seeing 1% of the story. That perfect photo represented maybe 30 photos that were discarded. That celebrated achievement may have cost you sacrifices you wouldn't have made. That displayed happiness may coexist with anxieties you couldn't imagine. Most importantly, develop the habit of constructive comparison. Instead of "why don't I have this?" ask "what can I learn from this?" Instead of "why am I not like this?" ask "what aspect of this aligns with my values?" Turn envy into inspiration, inadequacy into motivation. Also practice the Stoic exercise of perspective. When someone shares an achievement, instead of putting yourself down, practice genuine joy for someone else's success. The Stoics knew that celebrating the good in others is a way of multiplying the good in the world, and consequently in ourselves. The second unlocked code is this: your only real competition is with who you were yesterday. When you stop measuring your worth by the success of others and start measuring it by your own growth, you leave the prison of comparison and enter the freedom of personal progress. From the external comparison, we now come to the internal hijacking, how technology has literally hacked our brain's reward system, turning us into digital addicts without us even realizing it. This is perhaps the most urgent code for us to unlock, because it determines our ability to have control over our own minds. Your dopamine, the neurotransmitter responsible for motivation and reward seeking, was evolutionarily tuned for a world of scarcity. It was supposed to be released when you found food, shelter, mates, and novelties that were important to your survival. But technology designers have figured out how to hack this ancient system, creating endless loops of micro-rewards that keep you hooked. Every notification is a tiny hit of dopamine. Every like is a micro-reward. Every infinite scroll is a slot machine in disguise, where you never know when the next gratification will come. Your brain, wired to seek these rewards, enters a vicious cycle. The more you seek, the less satisfied you feel, but the more compelled you feel to keep seeking. The result is an epidemic of self-induced attention deficit disorder. You can no longer read a book for more than 10 minutes without feeling the urge to check your phone. You can't have a deep conversation without your mind wandering to social media. You can't be alone with your thoughts without feeling uncomfortable. Your ability to focus, contemplate, and connect deeply has been hijacked by algorithms designed to extract your attention. But here's a liberating truth: the Stoics faced similar challenges 2,000 years ago. They lived in a time of relative abundance, by the standards of the time, had access to immediate pleasures, and faced constant distractions. And they developed a system of self-discipline that is directly applicable to our digital context. Epictetus, who spent years as a slave before becoming a philosopher, knew better than anyone the difference between external freedom and internal freedom. No man is free who is not master of himself, he taught. He understood that you can be physically free but mentally enslaved by your own impulses. Seneca developed practical exercises in self-discipline that we can adapt directly to our digital age. He practiced voluntary fasting, not just from food, but from pleasures in general, to train his willpower. He deliberately exposed himself to minor discomforts in order to develop resilience to major discomforts. Marcus Aurelius, even though he was the most powerful man in the world at the time, maintained strict daily disciplines. He woke up early, practiced self-reflection, and set clear limits on his pleasures. He understood that power without self-discipline is corruption, and freedom without self-control is chaos. Let's apply this to your relationship with technology. Start with what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, imagining yourself without your favorite digital drug. Spend an entire day without Instagram. An entire morning without notifications. An entire evening without streaming. Not to punish yourself, but to train your capacity for conscious choice. Develop mindful pause rituals. Every time you feel the urge to reach for your phone, stop and take 3 deep breaths. Ask yourself, do I really need this right now, or is it just my dopamine circuitry asking for stimulation? More often than not, you'll find that the urge passes if you simply wait. Practice what I call a dopamine fast. Choose periods of the day where you deliberately abstain from digital stimulation. Start with 30 minutes, then an hour, then an entire morning. Feel your nervous system calming down, your mind clearing, your ability to concentrate returning. The third unlocked code is this: real freedom is being able to consciously choose how you respond to your impulses. When you develop mastery over your own desires, you step out of the tyranny of dopamine and into the sovereignty of conscious choice. From the tyranny of impulses, we are now immersed in an even more subtle illusion: the confusion between information and wisdom. We live in the age of infinite knowledge, where any fact is just a click away, where we can learn anything, where access to information has never been so democratic. And paradoxically, we have never been so confused, so lost, so paralyzed by the excess of information. You probably have hundreds of videos saved on YouTube, dozens of online courses purchased, stacks of ebooks downloaded, thousands of articles marked to read later. You consume information compulsively, always feeling like you need to know more, learn more, be more up to date. But at the end of the day, you feel more ignorant than when you started. This is the syndrome of infinite information. The more information you consume, the less capable you feel of making decisions. The more opinions you read on a subject, the less certain you are about anything. The more courses you buy, the less you actually learn. You become an accumulator of information, but not a cultivator of wisdom. The difference is fundamental. Information is external data, wisdom is internal understanding. Information can be downloaded, wisdom must be lived. Information multiplies options, wisdom clarifies choices. Information makes us eager to know more, wisdom makes us at peace with what we already know. The Stoics understood this difference viscerally. They lived in a time when the libraries of Alexandria and Rome offered access to all available knowledge, where philosophers from different schools debated endlessly, where there was an abundance of information for anyone who could access it. And yet, or precisely because of this, they developed a rigorous filter between useful knowledge and mere intellectual accumulation. Seneca was explicit about this. What good is a library if you don't read? What good is reading if you don't apply? What good is applying if you don't transform? He understood that knowledge without application is just intellectual entertainment in disguise. Epictetus, who lacked the privileges of a formal education but became one of the most influential philosophers in history, focused obsessively on what he called useful knowledge, only that which could make him a better, wiser, more resilient person. Marcus Aurelius, who had access to every philosopher and thinker in the empire, spent his later years writing only for himself, distilling all his learning into practical principles that he could apply in his daily life. His meditations are not an academic treatise, but a personal manual of applied wisdom. Let's apply this to your information consumption. Every time you feel tempted to consume more content, ask yourself, will this make me a better person, or just a more informed person? Will this help me make better decisions, or just give me more options to confuse myself with? Will this create action in my life, or just take up space in my mind? Develop the habit of informational digestion. For every hour you spend consuming new information, spend at least 15 minutes reflecting on how to apply that information to your life. Don't accumulate knowledge, process knowledge. Also practice what I call an information diet. Just as you are selective about what you put into your body, be selective about what you put into your mind. Choose a few high-quality sources over many sources of questionable quality. Choose depth over breadth, application over accumulation. The fourth unlocked code is this: wisdom does not come from knowing more, but from applying better what you already know. When you stop accumulating information and start distilling wisdom, you move from the anxiety of infinite knowledge to the peace of deep understanding. From information overload, we now come to the emotional heart of the abundance paradox, FOMO, that constant fear of missing out on something important, of not taking advantage of all the opportunities, of falling behind in an endless race of experiences. FOMO is perhaps the most characteristic anxiety of our era. It's that feeling you get when you see other people's stories and feel like you should be doing something more interesting. It's the discomfort of staying home on a Friday knowing that there are dozens of events happening in the city. It's the agony of choosing a career path knowing that you're closing the doors to all other possible paths. But FOMO isn't just about social events or professional opportunities. It manifests itself in all areas of digital life. Content FOMO, not being able to stop consuming because there's always something new. Connection FOMO, accepting all invitations and requests so as not to miss out on networking. Knowledge FOMO, compulsively buying courses for fear of becoming outdated. The result is a life lived always on the surface, always chasing the next thing, never going deep into anything, never developing real mastery in anything. You become a perpetual tourist of your own life, always visiting, never inhabiting. But here is a truth that will set you free. The Stoics discovered that acceptance of our limitations is not resignation, it is liberation. It is not giving up, it is focus. It is not loss, it is concentrated gain. Epictetus, who lived much of his life as a slave and then as a simple philosopher, was never able to experience the luxuries and privileges enjoyed by the rich and powerful of his time. But instead of lamenting what he could not have, he developed a powerful philosophy: do not ask for things to happen as you wish. Wish that they happen as they do, and you will be happy. This is not passivity, it is radical realism. It is recognizing that life is fundamentally limited. You cannot be in two places at once, you cannot live all possible lives, you cannot experience all possible experiences. And this limitation is not a bug of existence, it is a feature. Marcus Aurelius, even though he was the most powerful man in the world, understood his limitations deeply. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." He knew that living fully means consciously choosing some experiences over all others. Seneca developed a powerful exercise that we can apply directly to modern FOMO. He practiced what he called poverty meditation. He would periodically imagine himself losing everything he had, to develop gratitude for what he had and freedom from the fear of loss. Let's apply this to your digital FOMO. Every time you feel that anxiety that you're missing out on something, stop and practice what I call limitation meditation. Consciously remind yourself, I am a limited being, and that's okay. I can't experience everything, and this allows me to experience some things deeply. Develop the concept of JOMO, the joy of missing out. Actively celebrate your choices to not participate. When you choose to stay home and read a book instead of going to a party, celebrate the depth of the reading experience. When you choose to specialize in an area instead of being a generalist, celebrate the mastery that only comes from focus. Also practice the gratitude for limitation exercise. List 5 things you can't do or have, and for each one, identify how this limitation actually frees you to focus on what really matters. The 5th unlocked code is this: freedom doesn't come from being able to experience everything, but from consciously choosing to experience some things deeply. When you accept your limitations as features, not bugs, you move out of the anxiety of FOMO and into the joy of JOMO. From the fear of missing out on experiences, we now come to the most subtle and devastating loss of all, the loss of our own attention. We live in an economy where our attention has literally become a commodity, where sophisticated algorithms fight for our focus, where our ability to be present has become the scarcest and most valuable resource we possess. Stop for a moment and observe your mind right now. How many thoughts have passed through your mind in the last 30 seconds? How many times has your attention wandered while you were listening to this video? How many times have you felt the urge to pause to check a notification, respond to a message, or simply take a quick look at your phone? This is the reality of the modern mind, fragmented, scattered, constantly pulled in different directions. We can no longer read a paragraph without our mind wandering. We can't have a conversation without thinking about the next thing we're going to say. We can't experience a moment without the urge to document or share it. Multitasking, which our culture celebrates as efficiency, is actually a sophisticated form of self-induced attention deficit. Every time you switch from one task to another, your brain spends energy recalibrating, recontextualizing, and refocusing. The result is that you're busy but not productive, active but not present, connected but not aware. But here's the 6th code we're going to unlock. The Stoics developed the art of mindfulness 2,000 years ago. They called it Prosoche, and their techniques are surprisingly relevant to our digital age. Marcus Aurelius began each day with an exercise in mindfulness. He wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, remember what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." He understood that mindful attention to the present moment is not just a well-being technique, it is the very essence of a life well lived. Seneca practiced what he called daily examination. At the end of each day, he would consciously review how he had used his attention, where it had wandered, where it had remained focused. He treated attention like a muscle that needed to be constantly trained. Epictetus taught that you have power over your mind, not external events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He understood that the quality of our life experience is determined not by what happens to us, but by how we pay attention to what happens to us. Let's apply this to your relationship with technology. Every time you pick up a digital device, practice what I call the beginning breath, 3 conscious breaths before you begin any digital activity. This creates a space between impulse and action, between reactivity and conscious choice. Develop the habit of single attention. When you're doing something digital, reading an email, watching a video, having a conversation via text, do only that. Close other tabs, mute notifications, eliminate distractions. Experience the difference between fragmented attention and full attention. Practice scheduled reflective breaks. Every hour, stop for 2 minutes and ask yourself, how am I using my attention right now? Is it moving me closer to my goals or distracting me from them? Am I present or on autopilot? Also create digital contemplation moments, periods where you use technology not to consume, but to reflect. Use your phone to write down 3 things you're grateful for. Use your computer for journaling. Use your devices as tools for introspection, not just distraction. The 6th unlocked code is this: your attention is your most valuable resource, and you have complete power over how you use it. When you develop mastery over your attention, you step out of the tyranny of distraction and into the sovereignty of conscious presence. Mindfulness in the digital age is not about eliminating technology, it's about using technology consciously. It's about transforming your devices from masters into tools, from distractions into instruments of growth. From the moment we regain our attention, let's now delve into a more subtle form of imprisonment: digital consumerism. We're not just talking about buying products online, but about a hoarding mentality that has infiltrated every area of our digital lives: consumerism of content, courses, apps, virtual experiences. You probably have more ebooks than you could read in a lifetime, more online courses than you could complete in a decade, more apps installed than you regularly use, more saved content than you could possibly process. We live in an age where having more has become synonymous with being prepared, where accumulating digital resources gives us a false sense of security and progress. But this digital abundance has created a new form of poverty, the poverty of attention and satisfaction. The more content you accumulate, the less you appreciate each individual item. The more options you have available, the less you deeply commit to any one of them. You become a digital hoarder, but not a real doer. This hoarding mentality creates a constant, subtle anxiety. You always feel like you need one more course to be qualified, one more app to be productive, one more tool to be efficient. You live in an endless race of digital acquisition, always searching for the next thing that will finally make you feel complete. The Stoics had a radically different relationship to abundance. They lived in a time of relative material prosperity, with access to luxuries and pleasures, but they developed a philosophy of detachment that is profoundly liberating for our digital age. Seneca, one of the richest men in Rome, wrote, "He is not poor who has little, but he who desires more." He understood that real wealth is not measured by what you own, but by your ability to be satisfied with what you have. Applied to the digital context, this means that your digital wealth is not measured by the amount of resources you have accumulated, but by your ability to use the resources you already have well. Epictetus, who moved from slavery to philosophical freedom, taught that we should not identify with our external possessions, whether physical or digital. You are not your things, he said. You are not even your thoughts. You are the consciousness that observes them all. This perspective is revolutionary in an age where we tend to define ourselves by our digital library, our list of courses, our collection of apps. Marcus Aurelius, even though he had access to all the resources of the empire, deliberately practiced simplicity. He understood that elegance in life comes not from accumulation but from conscious curation, carefully choosing a few high-quality elements rather than many of dubious quality. Let's apply Stoic detachment to your digital world. Start by doing a complete digital audit. List every app on your phone, every course you've purchased, every ebook you've downloaded, every subscription you maintain. For each item, ask yourself honestly, is this actively serving my goals, or is it just digital clutter? Practice what I call functional minimalism. Keep only what serves a clear and specific purpose in your life. If you haven't used an app in the last 3 months, delete it. If you haven't accessed a course in the last 6 months, cancel it. If you haven't read an ebook in the last few years, remove it from your library. Also, develop gratitude for enough rituals. At least once a week, stop and consciously appreciate the digital resources you already have. Instead of thinking about the next course you want to buy, reflect on how you can get more value from the courses you already have. The seventh unlocked code is this: real digital wealth doesn't come from having more resources, but from making better use of the resources you already have. When you move from the hoarding mindset to the curation mindset, you'll discover that you already have everything you need to get started. From material detachment, we now come to the heart of the human experience: relationships. We are living the cruelest paradox of the digital age. We have never been so connected technically, but we have never felt so alone emotionally. We have thousands of online friends but few real friendships. We have constant conversations but little deep communication. Digital platforms promise to democratize relationships, connect us with people from all over the world, and keep in touch with everyone we already know. And in a way, they have delivered on this promise. You can instantly chat with someone on the other side of the planet, follow the lives of acquaintances from decades ago, and meet people with similar interests regardless of geographic location. But this hyperconnectivity has created a dangerous illusion. We confuse interaction with intimacy, networking with relationships, digital presence with emotional presence. You can spend hours interacting online and still feel deeply disconnected. You can have hundreds of superficial conversations, but not a single transformative conversation. Digital communication, by its very nature, tends towards superficiality. It's easier to share memes than vulnerabilities, to exchange information than to share fears, to have light conversations than to explore emotional depths. Gradually, we lose the ability to be genuinely present with each other, to listen deeply, to share authentically. Furthermore, digital curation encourages us to present edited versions of ourselves. In virtual relationships, we tend to show only our best moments, our achievements, our successes. This digital persona, even if not completely false, is incomplete. And relationships based on incomplete personas are necessarily superficial. The Stoics had a deep understanding of the nature of authentic relationships. They lived in a highly hierarchical society where social interactions were often performative and strategic, but they developed principles for cultivating genuine connections that are directly applicable to our digital challenges. Seneca wrote extensively about friendship, and one of his most powerful observations was, "Every new man is an opportunity for mutual benefit, if both are open to the truth." He understood that superficial relationships are transactional. What can I get out of this person? While deep relationships are transformational. How can we grow together? Epictetus taught that in relationships, as in everything else, we should focus on what is within our control. We cannot control how others treat us, but we can control how we treat others. We cannot force intimacy, but we can offer authenticity. We cannot guarantee reciprocity, but we can practice generosity. Marcus Aurelius, despite his isolated position as emperor, wrote of the fundamental importance of human connection. We were made to work together. He understood that we are fundamentally social beings, and that our individual fulfillment is inexorably linked to the quality of our connections with others. Let's apply this to your digital relationships. Start by practicing what I call conscious vulnerability online. Instead of sharing only your successes, share your challenges as well. Instead of showing only the polished version of yourself, show your human imperfections as well. Not dramatically or attention-seekingly, but honestly and with purpose. Develop the habit of full virtual presence. When you're having a digital conversation, whether it's via text, video call, or any other medium, be fully present. Close other apps, eliminate distractions, and give your full attention to the person you're interacting with. Also practice digital Stoic communication. Before sending any message, ask yourself if it is genuine, necessary, and kind. This simple check can transform the quality of all your online interactions. Create regular deep connection rituals. At least once a week, have a digital conversation that goes beyond the surface. Ask how the person is really doing, share something you're learning, explore a topic that matters to both of you. The eighth code to unlock is this: the quality of your relationships determines the quality of your life, and this is as true in the digital world as it is in the physical. When you transform superficial interactions into authentic connections, you discover that technology can be a tool for intimacy, not just distraction. From human connections, we now come to one of the most transformative discoveries of the Stoics: gratitude as a fundamental antidote to the chronic dissatisfaction of abundance. This may be the most powerful tool you will learn today, because it has the power to instantly transform your relationship with everything you already have. We live in a digital culture that trains us for perpetual dissatisfaction. Every algorithm is designed to show us what we don't have. Every feed is a curation of lives that seem better than our own. Every ad reminds us of some need we didn't even know we had. The result is that we have developed what psychologists call hedonic adaptation, an inability to be satisfied with what we have achieved. Have you ever noticed how quickly you get used to any improvement in your digital life? Remember the first time you got broadband, a smartphone, Netflix? The gratitude and excitement lasted a few days, then it became the new normal, and soon you were craving faster speeds, bigger screens, more streaming options. This hedonic adaptation creates a vicious cycle. You achieve something you wanted, feel momentary satisfaction, and then return to your previous level of satisfaction, but this time with higher expectations. It's like a hedonic treadmill, you're always running, but you never get anywhere. Digital abundance magnifies this problem exponentially. You have access to more music than you could listen to in 1,000 lifetimes, but you rarely stop to deeply appreciate a single song. You have access to more knowledge than entire civilizations have possessed, but you rarely celebrate the miracle of being able to learn anything instantly. You have communication tools that ancient kings could only dream of, but you rarely reflect on the privilege of talking to someone half a world away. The Stoics discovered that gratitude is not just a pleasant feeling, it is a mental technology for transforming abundance into satisfaction. They developed specific practices of recognition and appreciation that are directly applicable to our digital challenges. Marcus Aurelius began each day with an active gratitude practice. He wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, think of the precious privilege you have of being alive, of breathing, of thinking, of enjoying, of loving." But he didn't stop at the abstract. He specifically listed what he was grateful for that day, at that moment. Seneca practiced what he called premeditatio malorum, imagining the loss of the good things he had, not to be pessimistic but to develop genuine appreciation for what he had. "Every new conquest is a future loss," he wrote, "so enjoy it while you have it." Epictetus, who lived through the radical transition from slavery to freedom, had a unique perspective on gratitude. He taught that even in the worst circumstances, there is always something to be grateful for, even if it's just our ability to choose our response to the situation. Let's apply Stoic gratitude to your digital world. Start by creating a daily technological gratitude ritual. Every day, take 2 minutes to list 3 specific digital privileges that you have. Not abstractions like "I'm grateful for the internet," but specifics like "I'm grateful for being able to take this course that teaches me something new. I'm grateful for being able to talk to my mom who lives far away. I'm grateful for having access to this music that moves me." Also practice the exercise of conscious abundance. At least once a week, stop and literally count how many options you have available. How many movies are streaming? How many songs are on your playlist? How many contacts are on your phone? How many learning resources are in your digital library? Let yourself be genuinely amazed by this abundance. Develop the habit of gratitude. Pause before using any technology. Before you open Netflix, pause for 5 seconds and appreciate the fact that you have access to world-class entertainment. Before you make a video call, acknowledge the miracle of being able to see and speak to someone instantly, regardless of distance. Also create a sufficiency journal. Every weekend, write about moments during the week when you felt genuinely satisfied with what you had, where you didn't want for anything more, where you fully appreciated a digital experience. The 9th unlocked code is this: genuine gratitude is the most powerful antidote to the chronic dissatisfaction of abundance. When you develop the capacity to deeply appreciate what you already have, you step off the hedonic treadmill and into sustainable satisfaction. And finally, we come to the last code, perhaps the most practical and transformative of all: creating sustainable digital boundaries. This is the climactic moment of our journey, where all the principles we've explored crystallize into concrete actions that you can implement immediately to take back control of your digital life. Digital boundaries are not punishments you impose on yourself, they are structures of freedom you create for yourself. Without clear boundaries, you are at the mercy of momentary impulses, addictive algorithms, and endless distractions. With clear boundaries, you become the conscious architect of your digital experience. The vast majority of people live without defined digital boundaries. They wake up checking their phones, work with dozens of tabs open, eat while watching videos, sleep with their phones next to their bed. Their lives have become a continuous flow of digital stimuli with no pauses, no breathing space, no room for reflection or contemplation. The result is a reactive rather than proactive life, where you constantly respond to notifications, messages, updates, but rarely act on your own goals and values. You become a hostage to external digital rhythms rather than the master of your own time and attention. The Stoics understood deeply that real freedom comes from self-discipline, not from the absence of constraints. They developed rigorous systems of self-governance that are directly applicable to our digital age. Seneca wrote, "Every new man is an opportunity for mutual benefit, if both are disposed to the truth, but also, discipline is the bridge between thought and achievement, between inspiration and achievement, between necessity and productivity." He practiced voluntary fasting, endurance exercises, self-imposed limits on pleasures, not out of masochism, but to train his capacity for conscious choice. Epictetus, who understood both external slavery and internal freedom, taught that no man is free who is not master of himself. He developed practical exercises in self-control that began with small daily decisions and expanded to larger life issues. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man in the world, maintained strict personal disciplines. He woke up before dawn, practiced reflection exercises, and set clear limits on his pleasures and distractions. He understood that power without self-discipline is corruption, and abundance without limits is chaos. Let's create your own personal system of sustainable digital boundaries. Start with time zoning, designating specific periods of your day that are technology-free. This could be first thing in the morning, the last hour before bed, or a few blocks of time during the day for reflection and planning. Start small, even 30 minutes makes a difference, and gradually expand. Also implement spatial zoning, designate physical areas of your home that are free of digital devices. This could be the bedroom, for better sleep quality, the dining table, for deeper family connections, or a corner dedicated to reading and reflection. Develop clear communication protocols. Set specific times to check and respond to emails, texts, and social media. Communicate these times to the important people in your life so they have realistic expectations about your availability. You don't have to be available 24/7 to be a responsible person. Create a pre-commitment system. When you make decisions about digital boundaries, use structures that make it harder to impulsively break them. Set up apps that block websites during certain hours, leave your phone in another room during periods of focus, ask someone close to you to help you maintain accountability. Develop transition rituals between different digital activities. Instead of jumping straight from one task to another, pause for a minute, breathe, and set a clear intention for the next activity. This breaks the autopilot and restores conscious choice. Implement periodic reviews of your boundaries. Each week, honestly assess how your digital boundaries performed. What worked? What needs to be adjusted? How can you improve next week? Treat your boundaries as experiments that can be refined, not as rigid rules that must be perfect from the start. Be prepared for internal resistance. Your mind will try to negotiate, rationalize, and find exceptions to your limits. This is normal and expected. The key is to recognize this resistance as part of the process, not as evidence that your limits are wrong. Practice disciplined self-compassion. When you break a boundary, and you will, especially in the beginning, don't use it as an excuse to give up completely. Treat each breach as valuable information about how to improve your system, not as evidence of personal failure. The 10th and final unlocked code is this: well-designed digital boundaries don't limit your freedom, they create it. When you become the conscious architect of your digital experience, you move from reactivity to proactivity, from being used by technology to using technology for its highest purposes. And here we come to the end of our journey through the paradox of digital abundance. Together we have explored 10 fundamental codes that, when unlocked and applied, have the power to completely transform your relationship with technology and, consequently, with your own life. let's quickly recap the codes we've unlocked. We've learned that freedom comes from having clear criteria, not infinite options. We've discovered that our only real competition is with who we were yesterday. We've understood that self-control is the foundation of all genuine freedom. We've recognized that wisdom comes from applying what we already know well, not from accumulating more information. We've accepted that our limitations are features, not bugs. We've developed mastery over our own attention. We've practiced detachment as a form of real abundance. We've transformed superficial interactions into authentic connections. We've cultivated gratitude as an antidote to chronic dissatisfaction. And finally, we've created structures of freedom through conscious boundaries. These are not just abstract philosophical concepts. They are practical mental technologies, tested over 2,000 years, that work specifically because they address fundamental aspects of human nature that have not changed since the time of the Stoics. Stoic living in the digital age is not about rejecting technology or reverting to the past. It's about using ancient wisdom to consciously navigate modern reality. It's about being intentional rather than reactive, proactive rather than passive, conscious rather than automatic. The paradox of abundance can be solved, but not in the way our culture suggests. The solution is not to have more self-control so that you can consume more efficiently. The solution is not to optimize better to fit more experiences into your life. The solution is to fundamentally reorient your relationship to the concept of more. When you consistently apply the Stoic principles we've explored today, something extraordinary happens. You discover that you already have everything you need to be genuinely happy. Digital abundance stops being a source of anxiety and becomes a tool for growth. Technology stops being an addictive distraction and becomes an instrument for connection and learning. But all of this only works with consistent practice. Knowledge without application is just intellectual entertainment. You can perfectly understand all the concepts we discussed today, but if you don't implement at least some of them in your daily life, nothing will change. So here's my final challenge to you: pick one of the 10 codes that resonates most with your current situation. Just one. And implement a small practice related to that code today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. If you chose the first code about decision paralysis, delete 3 apps from your phone right now. If you chose the code about comparison, take a 24-hour break from social media. If you chose the code about mindfulness, practice 3 conscious breaths before picking up any digital devices for the rest of the day. The important thing is not to choose the perfect practice, it is to start with some practice. The important thing is not to implement everything perfectly, it is to take the first step consistently. Remember, you don't have to wait until you're motivated to get started. As the Stoics knew, action breeds motivation, not the other way around. When you act in alignment with your values, even in small ways, you strengthen your identity as someone who lives consciously in the digital age. The Stoic journey is a lifelong journey. It's not about achieving some final state of digital perfection, it's about becoming progressively more conscious, more intentional, more aligned with your deepest values. You've made it to the end of this video, which already shows that you have the necessary commitment to this transformation. Now it's time to move from knowledge to practice, from theory to real life. The abundance paradox may be the greatest challenge of our time, but it may also be our greatest opportunity. When you learn to consciously navigate digital abundance, you develop mental muscles that serve all areas of your life. You become more resilient, more focused, more fulfilled, more genuinely connected to others and to yourself. Stoic philosophy promises that a life well lived is possible for anyone, at any time, under any circumstances. This promise remains true today. In fact, it has never been more relevant. Subscribe to the channel and like the video to show your support. Welcome to your new relationship with the digital age. Welcome to your Stoic life in conscious abundance.